I'm Sarah. I'm 30, and I've practiced one skill my entire life, smiling while I'm being erased. It's a Tuesday. We're at the family dinner table when my mother, Helen, slides a plain white envelope across the table to my sister, Megan. $10,000, honey, she says. A little something for the new house. I watch Megan open it. I feel that old familiar coldness spread through my chest, a prickling numbness. I just keep smiling. Then my father, Richard, turns to me, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Still managing those little apartments, Sarah?" he asks. He's not being cruel. He's just blind. He has no idea what I do. I'm looking, I lie, my voice steady. They saw their quiet, steady daughter. They had no idea that just 4 hours earlier, I was in a gray, windowless office. They had no idea I had spent 2 hours signing my name until my hand ached. They had no idea I had just drained my entire life savings, bet everything I had on a single stack of papers, and lit a match they wouldn't see until the fire was too big to ignore. Before we dive into this story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, have you ever had to build your success in silence? Being the overlooked child doesn't happen all at once. It's not one big, loud event. It's a slow fade. It's 1,000 tiny moments that teach you to be quiet, to take up less space. You learn to speak softly because your voice just echoes in the space they leave empty around you. You learn to be the easy one, the practical one, the one who never needs anything. My entire life was built on this lesson. I was the quiet, brown-haired daughter. My sister, Megan, was the loud, blonde, laughing one. She was the one they saw. I was the one who blended into the wallpaper. I learned the rules of this dynamic when I was 12. I spent 3 months on a science fair project. It was a model city, built from scratch, with working circuits and tiny, functioning streetlights. I soldered every single connection myself in the basement, spending my allowance on wires and bulbs. When I won first place for the entire district, I was vibrating with pride. I set the blue ribbon on the kitchen counter while my mom, Helen, was making dinner. "Oh, that's nice, honey," she said. She was stirring a pot of spaghetti sauce. She didn't turn around. "What's it for?" "My project," I said. "I won first place." "That's great." The spoon scraped the bottom of the pot. Scrape. Scrape. She never looked. When my dad, Richard, got home, I showed him. He looked at the ribbon, then at the box holding my project. "Well," he said, tapping the plastic. "At least we know you're good with your hands. Good with your hands." That's what he said. Like I had built a birdhouse, not a small, working electrical grid. He meant it as a hobby, a craft. 2 months later, Megan had a regional swim meet. She came in fourth, not first. Fourth. That weekend, my parents threw a barbecue for her, bought her a new laptop for all her hard work, and took her to Disneyland that summer to celebrate her achievement. I watched her open the laptop box, and I felt that cold, familiar quiet settle in my stomach. I went to the basement and looked at my blue ribbon. I had taped it to the wall. It looked small. It looked stupid. That was the moment I learned the truth. My accomplishments were crafts. Megan's were achievements. My hard work was useful. Hers was talent. That blue ribbon was my first lesson in their math, and I learned it well. This pattern followed us our whole lives. When it was time for college, I treated the applications like a job. I wrote essays until my fingers were numb. I applied for every scholarship I could find. And I did it. I got a full academic scholarship to the state university. It covered everything. All 4 years. I thought, this they will have to see. This isn't a craft. This is real money. I sat them down and told them, "I got a full ride," I said. "It covers everything." My father, Richard, nodded slowly. He looked. I relieved. "That's practical, Sarah," he said. He didn't say congratulations. He said, "That's practical. Very smart. That saves us a lot of money. Good girl. Saves us money." That was my achievement. Not my intelligence. Not the late nights. My achievement was that I was not a financial burden. A year later, Megan applied to a private art school in Chicago. The tuition was $40,000 a year. She got in, but with no scholarship. I was home for winter break and I listened to them argue behind their bedroom door. My mother's quiet, Richard, we can't. My father's, we have to, Helen. It's her dream. Dream. That was a word they never, ever used for me. A week later, they announced it at dinner. My father raised his glass of milk. We're going to make it work, he said, beaming at Megan. You have to follow your dream, honey. We'll support you. I just sat there, eating my chicken. My practical scholarship wasn't about my dream. It was about their budget. Megan's expensive, impractical dream was something they would sacrifice everything for. I found out later they took out a second mortgage on the house. No one ever asked me what my dream was. I don't think they ever thought to. After college, the pattern was set in stone. I got a job as a leasing assistant and worked my way up to property manager. I told them about the promotion. My mom smiled. Oh, honey, that's wonderful. Does it have good benefits? My dad nodded. Property manager. That's a good, steady job. People always need a place to live. A steady job. Megan, who had dropped out of art school, got a job as a social media coordinator. She took pictures of clothes and posted them on Instagram. She's just got such a good eye, Mom would tell her friends. She's in marketing. She's so creative. I was the stagehand, working in the dark. Megan was the star, standing in the spotlight. And my parents were in the front row, throwing roses. So when I decided to buy a building, I knew deep in my bones that I could never tell them. If I told them, my father would call it risky. My mother would ask if the neighborhood was safe. They would find a way to make my dream small. I had been small for them my whole life. I was done being small. My secret wasn't about lying to them. It was about protecting myself. It was about building one thing, just one thing that their opinions couldn't touch. I was going to build it in silence. And that silence was my power. My investment fund didn't start with a $10,000 check. It started with $48. It was the change left over from my grocery budget one week. I opened a separate high-yield savings account, and I named it Future. For the next 3 years, that account was my religion. Ramen nights wasn't a joke. It was my life. While Megan was posting pictures of $15 cocktails, I was at home, boiling water. I bought my clothes at thrift stores. My 2011 Toyota Corolla had a crack in the windshield that I just learned to look past. My best friend, Rachel, would call me on Fridays. Come on, Sarah, just one drink. I can't, I'd say. I'm saving up for something. What? A new car? A vacation? Something like that, I'd lie. The dream felt too fragile. It was lonely. There were hundreds of nights I just wanted to give up, to go on a date with my boyfriend, Leo, to a restaurant that didn't have a drive-through. Leo was the only one who came close to understanding. He was a quiet, kind man, a librarian, and he respected my focus. He knew I was saving, but he didn't know the scale of it. What are you always reading? He'd ask. Just work stuff, I'd mumble. It wasn't work stuff. It was my education. While my family was watching TV, I was taking online courses in real estate finance. I read books on property law. I learned about depreciation, amortization, and cash-on-cash returns. I learned that peeling paint scared away most buyers, but it was cheap to fix. I learned that foundation issues were a black hole. As a property manager, I had a secret advantage. I knew the real costs. I knew exactly how much a new water heater cost. My father saw my job as a dead end. I saw it as a free education. I was getting paid to learn how to be a landlord. After 3 years of living like a ghost, I checked my future account. It said $22,450. I had done it. I took a deep breath, opened a new tab on my browser, and the real searching began. I wasn't looking for a home. I was looking for numbers that worked. The duplex on Pine Street popped up on a Tuesday. It was ugly. The listing photos were dark. The description was one sentence. 2 units. Needs TLC. Needs TLC. That's why it was so cheap. $89,000. I drove there on my lunch break. The neighborhood was older. The house itself was covered in faded, peeling blue paint. The front porch sagged. But I walked around the back. I looked at the foundation solid brick. I looked at the roof old, but not curling. I looked at the electrical meters, 2 separate meters. Good. I went back to my office and I ran the math. Purchase price, $89,000. My down payment, 20%. $17,800. My savings, $22,450. That left me $4,650 for closing costs and immediate repairs. It was tight. It was terrifyingly tight. I called the listing agent. I'd like to see the units. One unit was vacant. It was a mess. The other unit was occupied by a long-term tenant, Maria. She paid $700 a month and was always on time. So, $700 from Maria. The vacant unit, once I cleaned it, could also get $700. Total rent, $1,400 a month. My mortgage, with property taxes and insurance, would be about $750 a month. That left $650. I budgeted for repairs, future costs, and vacancy. My net profit would be $300 a month. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a start. It was a machine. That night, I got my pre-approval letter. I called the real estate agent. I offered $85,000. They countered at $87,500. I accepted. My hand was shaking. This was every dollar I had. My father's voice was in my head. It's risky, Sarah. You're getting in over your head. I closed my eyes. I thought about Megan's $10,000 check. I thought about my blue ribbon. I opened my eyes. I hit send. Closing day was a special kind of hell. I couldn't eat. I drove to the title office. It was a gray, windowless room. She pushed a stack of paper toward me that was at least 3 inches thick, and I signed. I signed my name over and over. I signed papers that said I understood I could lose the house if I failed. Then came the moment for the check. I had gotten the cashier's check that morning. $22,104. My entire savings. Gone. I slid it across the table. The closing agent stamped a final piece of paper. She looked up at me, and for the first time, she smiled. A small, real smile. "Congratulations, Miss Bell," she said. "You're now a homeowner." Miss Bell. Not Sarah, not Honey. Miss Bell. I think I stopped breathing. I walked out of that office into the bright sunlight, holding a single, old-fashioned brass key. I drove straight to the duplex. My duplex. I parked at the curb. I just looked at it. The peeling blue paint, the crooked porch. It was ugly, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. As I was walking up the steps, the tenant from the other unit, Maria, came out. She was an older woman with a kind, tired face. "Hello," she said, looking wary. "Hi," I said. "I'm Sarah Bell. I'm the new owner." She looked me up and down. "You're the new landlord?" "I am," I said. She hesitated. "The sink in my bathroom," she said. "It's been dripping for 6 months. The last guy, he never fixed it." "Let me see," I said. She let me into her apartment. The bathroom sink was dripping. Drip, drip, drip. "Okay," I said. "I'll be right back." I went out to my car. My dad's voice was in my head again. "Good, with your hands." I opened my trunk. I pulled out my own heavy-duty toolbox. I went back inside. Maria's eyes went wide. I got down on my knees. I lay on the cold tile floor. I got the wrench, shut off the water, and took the faucet handle apart. The washer was completely worn out. I replaced it and put the whole thing back together. I turned the water back on. Silence. No drip. I stood up, wiping grease on my pants. Maria was just staring at me. "Thank you," she finally whispered. "Thank you, Miss Bell." "Just Sarah," I said, smiling. I walked out of her apartment and into my empty unit. I sat on the dirty carpet, my toolbox next to me. And that's when I understood. I didn't just buy a house. When I fixed that sink, I realized the truth. I didn't just own property. I owned the problems, and I owned the solutions. I was no longer the forgotten daughter. I was the landlord. A week later, I was covered in paint. I had spent every waking hour that was not at my day job inside that vacant unit. I had ripped out the old carpet myself. I had scrubbed the walls. My back ached, my hands were cracked, and I had never been happier. Then my phone buzzed. It was my mother, Helen. The text read, "Sunday dinner, 6 p.m. Don't be late. We're celebrating Megan's new house." I had forgotten. I said, I scrubbed my hands until they were raw, but the white paint was still stuck under my fingernails. I put on the nicest clothes I had and drove to my parents' house. The second I walked in, the noise hit me. "Sarah, honey, you're late," Mom said, kissing the air near my cheek. We all gathered around the dining room table. "Dad," Richard poured the wine. He raised his glass, beaming at my sister. "A toast," he said, "to Megan, our little homeowner. She's got her new house, her great new job. We are so proud of you, honey." Mom wiped a tear from her eye. "It's just perfect, sweetie. That granite you picked out is just stunning." I just smiled and nodded. I was sitting there, an actual property owner, a landlord, and they were toasting my sister for picking out countertops they had paid for. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was just so tired. I waited for a pause. "It looks great, Megan," I said. "I've actually been thinking about buying something myself soon." My mother smiled, a polite, distant smile. "Oh, that's nice, honey. A little condo would be perfect for you." My father set his wine glass down. He chuckled. That same awful, dismissive chuckle. "Sarah, let's be realistic," he said. He patted my shoulder. "You've got a steady job, and that's great. But buying a house, it's a huge financial risk." I just looked at him. "I've been running the numbers. I think I can handle it." He shook his head, still smiling. "I just don't want you getting in over your head. You're not like your sister. Megan's an extrovert. She's a go-getter." And then he said the words that just broke something in me. "You should get a real career first. You're smart, Sarah. You really are. You hide." He turned away, his dismissal as complete as if he'd slapped me. "You hide." He saw my quiet, my discipline, my sacrifice, and he called it hiding. He saw my silence as weakness. I stood up. "Excuse me," I mumbled. I went to the kitchen. I gripped the edge of the sink, looking at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. I saw my tired face. I saw the white paint under my fingernails. I wasn't hiding. I was building. "You have no idea," I whispered to the glass. "You have no idea what I'm building." My secret was still safe. And for the first time, I was truly glad they couldn't see me. Their applause was cheap. Their validation was worthless. My duplex was real. The paint on my hands was real. The rent check that would be in my mailbox next week was real. I went back to the table and ate my dessert. That dinner was a turning point. I went back to my empty, painted apartment, and I made a vow. I would never ask them for anything. Not for money, not for help, and not for their approval. Their opinions were no longer part of my business plan. My life became a simple, repeating pattern. Wake up at 6 a.m. Go to my real job from 7 to 4. Change clothes in my car. Go to my own property from 4 p.m. until 10 p.m. I learned to do things I never thought I could. I learned drywall one frustrating Saturday, a $40 fix that I was quoted $500 for. 8 months after my first closing, my savings account hit $12,000. It was time. I bought my second property, another duplex on Maple Street. I ran the numbers. I signed the papers. My hand didn't even shake. I now owned 4 units. My total passive income, after all expenses, was $950 a month. The next day, I walked into my boss's office. "I'm putting in my 2 weeks' notice." He was stunned. "What? We can match the offer." "No," I said, and I smiled. "A real one. I'm going to work for myself." I called Leo that night, my voice shaking. "I did it. I quit my job." He was quiet for a moment. "You know what you're building, Sarah?" he said softly. "You're building an invisible empire." He was right. And my family, the people who thought I was hiding, couldn't see a single brick. My system was working. The $950 a month from my first 2 properties piled up. My life was a loop. Fix, rent, save. I was 30 years old. It had been 18 months since I quit my job. With the cash flow, I bought my 3rd property. It was a small single-family house. 6 months later, I bought my 4th, another duplex. I was now the owner of 6 units. My portfolio was worth about $320,000. My passive income, after all expenses, was just over $1,600 a month. It wasn't a fortune, but it was real. I was still living in my same cheap apartment. I was still driving my old car. My empire was invisible and still unknown to my family. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. I was in the middle of painting a bedroom. "This is Sarah," I said. "Hi, is this Sarah Bell?" a professional voice asked. "Yes. My name is Michelle Chen. I'm a journalist with the Metro Business Journal." I stopped painting. "I'm sorry. Who?" "Michelle Chen," she repeated. "I'm a business reporter. I'm doing a story on local real estate investors, and your name came up." My heart stopped. "My name? How?" "I track LLCs and public deed transfers," she said. "An LLC named Pine and Maple Holdings has purchased 4 properties in the last 2 years. The public records list you as the sole owner. That's a very fast acquisition rate. I wanted to hear your story." She had found me, the paper trail. It wasn't invisible after all, it was public record. "Oh," I said. "My story. It's not very interesting." "A 30-year-old woman buying 4 properties in 2 years by herself?" she said. "I think it's very interesting. Could I buy you a coffee?" We met the next day. I was so nervous I spilled my coffee twice. "So," she said, opening her notebook. "How did you get the seed money? Big inheritance? Family money?" I flinched. "No," I said. "No family money. I saved it. It took me 3 years. I worked as a property manager and I ate a lot of ramen." Michelle stopped writing. She looked up at me. "Okay," she said. "Now I'm really interested." And so, I told her. I told her everything. I told her about the science fair ribbon. I told her about my practical scholarship and Megan's dream college. "They gave my sister $10,000 for her new house," I said. That same night, my dad laughed at me. He told me I hide. He had no idea I'd just made an offer on my first duplex that morning. Michelle was just staring at me. "And they still don't know? That you own 6 units? That you're a full-time investor?" "No," I said. "As far as they know, I'm still a part-time manager at a job I quit almost 2 years ago." Michelle closed her notebook. "Sarah," she said, "this isn't just a business story. This is an incredible story." A week later, the article ran. Leo sent it to me. The headline was massive. "How a 30-year-old built a $320K real estate portfolio without family money." And there I was. The photo was huge. It was me, standing in front of my first peeling blue door, holding up a set of keys. The article told the whole story. It had my name. It had the name of my LLC. It had the $10,000 check for my sister. It had my father's "you hide" quote. And it had my answer to her last question. "Did your family help you?" My answer, printed in bold, "No, they didn't even know." I sat on my cheap apartment floor and read my life story. My phone was on the carpet next to me. It was silent for about 10 seconds. And then it exploded. The first call was my mother. I stared at her name. "Mom." I let it go to voicemail. A second later, a text message. "Mom, Sarah, please call me right now. Is this article real?" Before I could even process it, another call. "Dad." I let it go to voicemail. "Dad. You own 4 properties? Since when? What is this article? I don't understand." Then, a text from Megan. "Megan, oh my God, Sarah, are you rich? Why didn't you tell me?" My phone began to buzz and chime without stopping. My aunt, my uncle, my old friend Rachel. The invisible empire was suddenly, violently, visible. I turned the phone off. I couldn't. I sat in the silence. The bomb had gone off. I was terrified. But I was also, strangely, breathing. The 30-year weight of being invisible. It was just gone. They could see me now. They had to. I left my phone off for the rest of the day. The last text that came through before I powered it down was from my mother. "Mom, you are coming to dinner this Sunday, 6 p.m. We are not discussing this over text. We need to talk." It wasn't a request. It was a summons. The entire week was agony. Leo, my boyfriend, offered to come with me. "No," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I have to do this alone." That Sunday, I drove to my parents' house. I walked in. The house was silent. It was never silent. They were all there, my mom, my dad, and Megan. They were sitting at the dining room table, the scene of so many of my humiliations. It looked like an intervention. My mother's eyes were red. My father just looked old. Megan was staring at the table. The newspaper was sitting in the middle of the table, folded to my article. My picture was facing up, looking at all of them. I sat down in my usual chair. My dad, Richard, spoke first. His voice was hollow. "Sarah." "Why?" he asked. I just looked at him. "Why, Dad? Why this?" He tapped the newspaper. "Why tell a reporter these things about us? That we mocked you? Why didn't you just tell us?" And there it was, the question. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. I took a deep breath. I did not yell. I did not cry. I just spoke the truth. "Because you weren't listening." My mother let out a small sob. "I tried to," I continued, looking right at my father. "That night, the night you gave Megan the check, I tried to tell you I was looking at a property, and you laughed at me. You told me I was hiding. Do you remember saying that, Dad?" He stared at me. I could see the memory dawning on his face. He remembered. I did say that," he whispered. "I thought you were just afraid of the world. I thought you were hiding." "I wasn't hiding, Dad," I said, my voice soft. "I was working. I was saving. I was studying. You couldn't see it." He finally looked up at me. And the pride, the bluster, it was gone. He just looked broken. "You weren't stuck," he whispered, like he was realizing it for the first time. "You were building." My mother finally broke. She put her head in her hands and just cried. "We're so proud of Megan," she finally said, wiping her eyes. "She's always been so loud. She always needed so much. And you," she looked at me, her eyes pleading. "You were just always so easy, Sarah. You were so good. You never asked for anything." She choked on a sob. We stopped looking. We just assumed you were okay. "We didn't see you, honey. We didn't see you at all. And I am so sorry." I just nodded. I heard her. Then, the biggest surprise. "Megan, that $10,000, she said softly. "I needed it. I was broke. I couldn't have closed on the house without it." She looked up, and her eyes were full of a new, raw emotion. It wasn't jealousy. It was awe. "My job. It's not what you think. My house. I can barely make the payments. I have $20,000 in credit card debt just from furnishing it." She took a shaky breath. "You were building real things," she said. "You were building assets. I was just showing off." She finally looked right at me. Are you really rich?" "No, Megan," I said. "I'm not rich. I'm just secure." The room was silent again. The power, for 30 years, had been on their side of the table. Now, the power was just in the middle of the table. It was in the truth. I looked at my broken, blind, sorry family. The anger I had held for so long, it was gone. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt light. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to prove anything. They finally looked, and they finally saw me. The weeks after that dinner were a new kind of quiet. My mother called me, not to tell me about Megan, but to ask about me. How is your day, Sarah?" My father texted me. "I was looking at my property tax bill. It seems high. Do you know anything about appealing that?" It was his way of saying, "I respect you. I see you as an expert." A few weeks later, I closed on my 5th property. It was a small 2-bedroom house, my easiest closing yet. I had saved the 20% down payment entirely from the profits of the other 4. The machine was working perfectly. I went to the house that evening. I stood in the empty living room. The sun was setting, and the light was pouring through the windows. I took out my phone. I took a picture of the keys in my hand. And I did something I had never done before. I opened my personal social media account. I posted the picture. And I just wrote the truth. Caption: "Started with nothing but a dream and a savings account. No shortcuts, no permission, just work." I posted it. It was the first time I had ever publicly claimed my success. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a comment from my mother. "Mom, so proud of you, sweetheart. Always have been, even when I didn't show it right." I read the comment. It was a lie, of course. She hadn't always been, but it was her truth. It was the best she could do. And as I stood in that empty house, I started to cry. I slid down the wall and just sat on the floor and wept. Not for the pain, not for the past. I cried because it was over. The long, 30-year fight to be seen. It was just done. It was a cry of pure release. I was still sitting there when Leo called. He must have seen the post. "Hey you," he said. His voice was warm. "How does it feel?" "It feels good," I whispered, my voice thick from crying. "I saw your mom's comment," he said gently. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, wiping my face. I cried. "Good," he said. "You deserve to." "You know?" he said softly. "I was thinking about it today. You realize you've become the person you needed when you were 22? His words hit me so hard I stopped breathing. My two-year-old self. The girl eating ramen, the girl who was so lonely, so desperate for just one person to see her, the girl who went to the basement to look at a blue ribbon. And I had done it. I had saved her. I had become her hero. "Yeah," I whispered. "I guess I did." I drove to Pine Street that night. I parked across the street from my first duplex, my first ugly, beautiful building. The paint was still peeling. Maria's light was on. She was safe. She was warm. Because of me. This building. This was my $10,000 check. This was my private college. My father was wrong all those years ago. I wasn't just good with your hands. I was great with my hands. And I was great with my mind. I didn't need their applause anymore. I didn't even, I realized, need their apologies. The work was enough. The numbers were enough. I was enough. The forgotten daughter was gone. The woman who was left, the woman who built an empire in silence, had finally been seen. And the best part was that she had finally seen herself. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit the subscribe button and join our community. Your validation, your dream, is worth the work.